So, powers of X, because I'm not going to say powers of 10. Number four, I'm sitting here like, how did he do this? He is trying to consolidate all of the X-Men history into one event and make it make sense. And he took Apocalypse, he took Inferno, he took Krakoa, he took Destiny and the Brotherhood and Mystique, and he took the Phalanx and he tied it into Decimation. Stories that are like completely unrelated, characters that have never even met each other, and he's trying to make it into one thing and make it all connected. And I'm sitting here like, this is just, how did he, like, how does one connect Apocalypse to like Destiny somehow? And the link has always been Moira anyway, and Krakoa. But so I I mean, at first I'm like, does anybody really want Inferno back? Like, why are we going that far back? But then I'm being such a hypocrite because anyone who knows me knows that when Piscor's X-Men Grand Design came out, I was like, I would not stop talking about it. I'm like, he's gonna make all the X-Men events into one, and so like this is the same thing. And I enjoyed Grand Design kind of. So yeah, um, this will be interesting to see what else he can fold into this. But so he also seems to be bringing back like really obscure things, which is kind of scary. But um, first it was the Omega Sentinels, which had gone away, and then Nimrod and the Phalanx that no one has mentioned in a while, and now Madeline Pryor. And I think I saw preview art for Omega Red, and it's just like these things are so niche and they're so like unconnected, and he's just like, oh, I'm bringing it all back, all right. And it's like, it's kind of funny because you get a superstar writer and he's doing X-Men, and you think he's gonna go for the big fish, and he's out here writing stories about really specific and forgotten things like the Phalanx. Anyway, so Xavier starts the issue, um, and he's going to Sinister to start him off on his cloning obsession. So we have him to thank for that. Um, so I'm wondering, what does what is Xavier's purpose for this? I wonder if he, having knowledge of the future, if knowing that Jean Grey and Cyclops are gonna die, if he wants to secure that, hey, I need your genetic expertise, and I need you to make sure that they're gonna live in some way. So I'm thinking that that's why um, Xavier turns to Sinister, because he can't stand that he's gonna lose Scott and Jean in the future in this fight, and Sinister can bring them back through cloning. And it is like a Faustian trade. He's making a deal with the devil, and we talk about Krakoa is the Garden of Eden, and we know Sinister from the future stories. We know that Sinister is going to be the Judas, and he's going to betray everyone. But um, this is Xavier's trade. Is in exchange for Cyclops and Jean to survive, he's gonna make a deal with Sinister. Is what I'm guessing. Is how I'm reading it. But it's also a way to intellectualize what I think is a dumb villain. I never understood Sinister at all. I don't get his motives, but now this kind of makes sense. Like, he has knowledge of the future, and he's also been mind wiped by Xavier. So, like, he just sets off on cloning for cloning's sake, which has always been his shtick. But I'm like, but for what? But now it like makes more sense to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm alone, but I never got Sinister. Um, but another terrible thought that entered my mind was, is this how the X babies are gonna come in? Are the X babies the cloned X-Men that that Sinister is raising? Because we've seen X babies in the advertising. Oh boy. Anyway, the revelation about Thunderbird being the DNA that Sinister used in himself, that seems like really random to me and pointless. I mean, I know that this writer doesn't really like do pointless things, but it seems like so out of the blue. It's like that like didn't go well with me. I'm like, why? I don't know. Uninteresting. Um, but another thought that it brought up was, is Sinister a hive mind himself? Because he's got like millions of Sinisters, and I mean, are they a hive mind? Do their numbers equal intellect? Like, does it make him smarter? Um, which are thoughts that are being brought up in the future with the librarian and the phalanx. Anyway, just is Sinister a hive like the cuckoos? Oh, the cuckoos are also clones. Maybe clones are hives. Anyway, okay. But the most interesting thing in the whole issue for me, which I didn't think it was like an amazing issue, but anyway, it's kind of like random and weird. I wish that he had told like the stories in coherent narrative, like I'd seen Magneto and Professor chronologically, not like broken up in like scenes throughout issues. Anyway, but the most exciting thing to me is that Sinister says that his mutant power is stopping tyrants, foreshadowing because we know that he's going to betray Krakoa in the future. So, who becomes a tyrant that needs to be overthrown? Is it Xavier? I can see that. And Xavier has made taken some liberties with people's lives, and made some difficult choices and some Faustian deals, and maybe it'll come back and bite him in the ass, and he's the tyrant that Sinister will stop. That would be a nice twist, and or it could be somebody else, another tyrant, Apocalypse, or although he didn't seem tyrannical in the future, but maybe Cyclops. I don't know, but that was interesting. Uh, Another thing that I also liked was when it was said, um, when you square the circle, the thing that took so long to build will come crumbling down. So to me, that's the foreshadowing of the crumbling down of Krakoa, which is what took so long to build. A future for mutants took so long to build because it took 10 of Moira's lives, and it took all this planning and putting people on a board by Xavier. So it'll come crashing down when you square the circle. The circle, as we've been talking about in my other videos, click below. The circle is the cyclical time, and that's what Moira is trying to put a stop to. Like, she keeps reliving this, and it never gets any better. It just keeps getting worse. So she's trying to break the circle, and maybe they're going to make a square out of that circle. Who makes squares? Well, Mr. Sinister makes squares. He is the diamond. So, will he square the circle? Will they break the cyclical time if they band together, which is Xavier's plan, joining Sinister, Magneto, Moira, Apocalypse, and Magneto, the big five. Anyway, so Krakoa and Doug in the next scene. So Professor introduces Cypher to Krakoa. Did he know they were going to hit it off? He has knowledge of futures, and he knows that Moira certainly told him about in Powers of X in the future how Doug and Krakoa are hinted to have joined into one. They fuse, so they really hit it off. So here we get to meet them, their first meeting, their first date, and but really, what is the purpose of this scene to me is for Krakoa to give us its backstory. So Krakoa is kind of, we've been talking about, it's the Garden of Eden. It's a safe haven. It's beautiful. It's utopic, and there's the Adam and Eve that we saw in the first issue, which is probably Cyclops and Jean. Anyway, so Krakoa is this Garden of Eden, and we meet finally the opposite, the the hell, that where the banished souls live, the demons, and that was what we saw Apocalypse deterring in the far past. And by the way, I couldn't help but think, I'm a big Selene fan. I wonder how Selene feels about being downgraded from oldest mutant. I mean, I consider her. I mean, they say that she's the oldest mutant as well. So I wonder how she feels about this issue. But so we see Apocalypse beat back those demons from the Hell Krakoa. So there's the good Krakoa and the bad Krakoa. It's like heaven and hell, or maybe the Garden of Eden. And so, and also, it seems like this is where he's going to tie in Inferno, because it seemed an awful lot like, I mean, it was clearly hell, but it seemed an awful lot like Limbo. And we know that mutants have this big connection to Limbo. So it seems like he's trying to tie in Inferno and Krakoa, and therefore also Apocalypse's origin. It's all going to be one mishmash. It's going to be one long narrative, which is exciting. But what's next? Oh, in that scene, Xavier is dressed like Cassandra Nova. Yes, my favorite character. And it's a reference to Morrison, and he's dressed like in the safari outfit. So the juxtaposition here is that was Cassandra's big plan. Was Cassandra introduced through technology, giving Sentinels to the humans, to Trask. She facilitated destruction, and that's how decimation started. Now we see the opposite happening, and Xavier's got his big salvo, and it's Xavier is taking nature and giving it to mutants, Cypher, and that will facilitate creation. So it's really like opposite. So Cassandra's like a force for destruction, and Xavier is facilitating, is becoming this force for creation. So that was really cool, and it goes with God symbolism that Xavier has been emanating since the first issue, and the Alpha and Omega symbolism, and the creation and destruction of the world. So that fits, checks out. So I thought there was a cool panel if you reread the scene where Doug is walking towards Krakoa and he touches the plant, and it just starts to integrate into Krakoa, and already Krakoa and Warlock are like fusing into something bigger, and that's cool. But it was like super subtle. I only saw it the second time I read it, or maybe it's not that subtle and I'm like really stupid. Another thing that I'm glad when Warlock is speaking, he touches his face with the robot hand, the Warlock hand, and that's a visual cue from the artist that, oh, now it's Warlock who's speaking. So because otherwise I really wouldn't have been able to tell if it was Warlock or if it was Doug who was speaking. But yeah, that was cool. That was a neat little thing. I love the symbolism in the art. Silva is the artist for this one, I think, which is so cool because he's Brazilian, represent. Yeah. So Krakoa says that it's half now. It's not whole. Um, so it's lost half of itself. And that's emotional because he's saying this to Warlock and Cypher. And Cypher and Warlock understand the symbiosis and what being half and not being whole feels like. But it also reminded me of the first theme of the event, which was Alpha and Omega, Xavier and Magneto. There's another two halves of a whole. They're always fighting, but they're always part of the same conversation, so they can't keep away from each other. But we'll see how long their partnership lasts. I don't see it going very far. And then in the future, which doesn't concern me too much, it seems like fans don't really like the future part as much, but I certainly am not too hot about it. But in the future, the Phalanx are the society is being integrated into the Phalanx, and they're like, okay, so are we lying? Are we gonna trick? Are we gonna trick the Phalanx? And they're like, no, there's no tricking it. It's we're really integrating in, but we're gonna take it down from the inside, is what's hinted. So I don't know whose mind is being put inside the Phalanx. I can't really think of somebody with strong enough will. Maybe Professor X. I mean, that's if you're gonna infiltrate a technological hive mind. I would imagine you would get the world's biggest brain. I don't know. He would be dead long by then because it's like in 1,000 years in the future. Anyway, whatever. We'll see. We'll find out. But that's they're taking the Phalanx down from the inside. And then lastly, Xavier mentions that we have needs that outgrow our desires. There will be some hard choices. So, I mean, the first hard choice was choosing to save his students by creating a pact with Sinister. But what other concessions will he make to his dream? And what needs will mutants have that they're going to be willing to do evil for and to give up their morals for? I predicted that the X-Men will become the villains because things will be morally gray for them, and they're so used to being the underdog, they're going to find themselves on top, like we see in the future. And when they're on top, they'll see it's hard to keep your morals. So I predict that they will do evil, they will do war too. Anyway, maybe I should talk about the 10 secrets. The one where it says that Sinister is wearing red shoes. That doesn't make sense. I looked through the book and nobody's wearing red shoes except for Rasputin in the future. So I don't get that. But, and I don't understand, the only reference I can think of is like The Wizard of Oz. And I don't see why Sinister would want to go back home. So I don't understand the significance of the red shoes. But about the person who is a trend-setting mutant, who is going to be the flower that's the fullest, I don't understand that either. I thought it was going to be Mondo, but then I thought about it, doesn't make sense. I don't think he was dead. I don't know. I really don't get that one. I think it has to be someone that's like a flower that's going to be to their fullest. Is there an X-Men that's like got a flower name, like Daisy or something? I don't know. I don't get that one either. So far, I'm not very helpful. But this one here, the one where she's married with a kid, and then it kind of like, it seems like there's going to be a love rectangle or something, or a love square, or a love diamond. And then I think that the significance of that to me is that we're talking about multiple lives. Clearly, some of the X-Men are going to be cloned. They're going to live multiple lives because they're going to be cloned. We see that some of them are dead, some of them are going to come back. That says to me that, do you remember when Moira, she lived a life where she had a husband and it was a beautiful, loving life, and she died and she had to relive the same life again? And the second time around, she just didn't feel that spark. I think, okay, now that I even say it out loud, it sounds really cool. It sounds better. I think that when these mutants live their second life as a clone or whatever, they're just gonna be, the gusto's not gonna be there. It's kind of like when Jean came back the second time around. Her marriage with Cyclops didn't go so well. So I think that's where we're going with this. Is you kind of become a little disillusioned, or you get to try new things. Oh, it's my second life. Like, I think that's where we're going. I thought that was cool that Moira lost something of herself in the second life, or she lost significance, or her scope became so much bigger that she lost that ability to love. But yeah, that would be cool if they did that. He's been hinting that there's going to be like mutant orgies this whole time, but I can get behind this idea because there's something behind it. It's like so much knowledge with the second life that it kind of takes away the je ne sais quoi, or the quality of living um, the second time around. Anyway, is that all I want to say? Oh, okay. The most important one is the last one, where it says that Sinister thinks, Xavier thinks that he's playing Sinister, but Sinister has been hip the whole time. So it says here that he's replaced somebody in the past, a mutant, and he's been playing everyone. He's been playing the game from the beginning. So that means to me, in another of Moira's lives, a previous life, he was masquerading as someone else. We don't know Life 6. I'm sure Life 6 has something to do with Sinister. I've said that. I said that like in the second video I did. But I think the most likely culprit is Moira herself. I think he's gonna have brainwashed Moira, and she's his agent. That's what I think, and that's how he's gonna have an upper hand. And Xavier thinks he has the upper hand coming to Sinister right now, but I think it's going to be revealed that Sinister has rigged the game from the beginning. That's my guess. My second guess would maybe be like Destiny, or I was thinking somebody in the Brotherhood, but I think Moira is for sure. Okay, that's all I have to say. Bye.